The International Committee of the Red Cross says the strategies for giving must now change in line with development entrepreneurship. CNBC Africa's Christycole Popoola spoke to the ICRC Deputy Regional Director for Africa, Patrick Youssef, on the back of the organization's recently signed MOU with the Tony Elumelu Foundation's entrepreneurship program. Take a look.
So this event today is a culmination, is a result of a long-term process, a debate, a discussion, an exchange with the foundation that has made not only a name for itself, but a credible position for it, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole. The event itself, again, is a result of that effort of sharing values since quite some time, and making sure that in the memorandum of understanding we just translate the willingness of both institutions to work together for a common goal, which is supporting entrepreneurs and people who are directly affected by wars and conflicts on the continent and specifically in Nigeria.
Now, when the International Committee for Red Cross decides to sign a partnership agreement with a development capitalist, the Tony Elumelu Foundation, what is it looking to achieve? So we have to,
before talking about the signing and the commitment itself, we have to understand that the wars that are fought today are either very long-term, very protracted, take a lot of time, demolish the infrastructure, but also demolish the men and women that form our communities. And when we speak about finding solutions to long-term conflicts, we need to tackle directly the reasons why these conflicts are taking place, and also trying to rehabilitate the individuals and the communities in order for them to stand up by themselves. When we speak about an emergency, the simple response is to provide food and water, shelter, and some medical care. But after 5 to 10 years in a displacement camp, a person that has lost everything wants to be supported in order to get his livelihood and the livelihood of his family taken care of by himself, and not be subject to, again, funding, aid and assistance by international organizations. So the reason why, in fact, we looked at incapacitating, making sure that empowering the people and entrepreneurs is to stand up by themselves and provide a dignified answer to their needs, rather than providing them with these 10, 20 kilos of rice every month. Give them the means to prosper themselves in their livelihoods and grow maybe their own crops.
Which brings to mind one of the points that was raised earlier in the speech at the opening of the event, which spoke about the shift by the ICRC from emergency assistance to cash-based assistance. What prompted this shift really, and are you able to give us more insight into how the Red Cross expects to make this work?
The Red Cross bases its assessments on listening to people. We are not an organization that sits behind offices. We are not internet geeks that just monitor what people say. We are on the ground. We are in Borno, we are in Mongono, we are in Adamawa. We are where the people, in fact, have a right to articulate what for them is the right humanitarian assistance. I would say that, again, in the first phase of emergency, people don't have much of an opinion. They receive water and food because that's their immediate need. But after a while, we listen to them, people telling us that they need funds, they need cash for them to decide how they use their funds and how to support their families. So, for example, in areas where agriculture is the main economic vector, the ICRC, along with the communities, provide that assistance through seeds and tools and the means for themselves to grow their crops. So I think it's the answers are becoming more smart, more dignified, but also more close to what the people need.
What necessitated, or the question should be, what prompted the ICRC during its selection process? You mentioned earlier you looked for partners to work with. Why did the ICRC choose to work with the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Foundation?
So the ICRC's natural partner, and we should remind that very highly and openly, is the Nigerian Red Cross. Is our local partner, is our partner in the good, in the bad, in the action, in the disappointments. So it's a natural partner with whom we work on a daily basis. It's like a bigger family that forms the movement of the Red Cross in the world. For the foundation itself, we were seeking, in fact, organizations that hold same values or share common values with the ICRC. And when we found that the foundation has a history, a platform that has been built to strengthen the capacity of entrepreneurs, we thought joining forces would be the right angle. It is not only the foundation, the Tony Elumelu Foundation, that we seek to work with. We have many partners in the country, but for this specific action, we thought that the foundation had the means and had the ethical and moral authority to allow the ICRC to prosper and make sure to amplify its response to those specific group of people.
Now, to what extent will the ICRC be working with TEF in selecting the beneficiaries?
So that's an excellent question. Why, in fact, have we decided to join hands with the foundation? It's because those entrepreneurs that are maybe in Lagos or in Abuja or in the south have a direct access to the offices of the foundation. When people in the Northeast, destituted communities, have not been able, again because of the lack of access to internet, lack of potentially applying, these are people who knock on our doors to receive assistance. And we thought what best could be to bring those two worlds together. The foundation from one side, who has the expertise and the moral compass in the right direction, and those who unfortunately have no voices. And the ICRC's role is to voice the concern of those who have lost their voices, people who are living in camps, people who are refugees, people on their hospital bed who cannot speak anymore, who cannot voice their concern, and those entrepreneurs who unfortunately don't get the right attention so that their ideas can prosper. And this is where the ICRC connection plays a big role.
So now, what criteria will the foundation and the ICRC be looking at in selecting the beneficiaries?
I think the simple criteria is the project, is the idea that any project from an ICRC perspective that builds the livelihood of people, that builds an economic prospect for people to stand by themselves and not be dependent on humanitarian aid. Anything that with a small amount of money can prosper and become, in fact, a self-sustaining project on the short to medium term would be a main criteria for us to accept these people.
I would have thought, because the project essentially mentions Niger Delta and the Northeast, that maybe being from that region of Nigeria would be a criterion. I'm just...
No, absolutely. That was your previous question. That, in fact, is a de facto... again, for those who are living outside of these two neighborhoods, have had their chances, and the success of the Tony Elumelu Foundation and the alumni who have passed through the programs certify that they don't need the ICRC. But where, in fact, the collaboration makes use is when we, in fact, offer them access to these neighborhoods that are totally destituted, unfortunately. Yeah.
And I'll ask you the first question that came to my mind as a journalist when I walked in and I looked at that board. I thought, what business really has the International Red Cross Committee got endeavoring to empower Nigeria's Northeast and Niger Delta?
The ICRC's mandate is very simple. Is to provide assistance and care for those who have been affected by wars and by situations of violence. We take our mandate from the states who have asked us through the Geneva Conventions to become a reliable, credible organization that provides aids and protection, not only food and water, but also protection, a safety net, a social net around people who are directly affected by wars. So our beneficiaries, in fact, are not only those who require immediate assistance, but also those whose businesses have been destroyed due to war and conflict. So in a way, just imagine that, a head of household with 3 kids having to live through these 20 kilos of rice that he gets every month, but has, in fact, who was a wealthy farmman or a herder, that with a simple vaccination of his cows would be able to sustain his own livelihood without the ICRC. So in fact it's an evolution, it's a development of humanitarian assistance in a world of development that brings more capacity to those people to decide by themselves and to provide them with a dignified response to respond to their needs.
And where do you see this going ultimately? Is this a one-off project? Is it a flash in the pan? Or will the ICRC continue to follow the path of cash-based assistance?
I would like to revert you back to my speech. These programs, in fact, have existed since a long time. Cash assistance, microeconomic financing, women-headed households, support to people that have been displaced, because these projects have been ongoing, and I've turned the world from Iraq to Yemen to Mali to Sahel region, and where these projects have existed. This collaboration today has only the merit to amplify that response. It has existed already from our two institutions, but the combination of which will result into an amplifying effect. From 1,000 entrepreneurs, the number now will increase to 1,200. And if I may add, we're a modest organization. We're the Red Cross, we're not a state. We're not the multitude of organizations that should take the example of what our collaboration with the Tony Elumelu Foundation and maybe seek the same path and expand their operations in that direction.
Are you able to, at this point, tell me if other aid organizations have been looking to moving from emergency assistance to offering the same kind of model that you just spoke about?
I can offer you a list of names of organizations on different scales and different volumes that have decided going in that smart way of organizing assistance. I would name the World Food Program, UN agencies, but also other organizations that are going in that same direction, that do have the expertise, but maybe not the amplifying power of such organizations. This is why my last message was to say our ambition is to work on creating these synergies with other foundations in Africa, or the African Development Bank, or organizations of a development nature that, combined with the expertise of the ICRC in conflict areas, would make magnificent results.
That was Patrick Youssef, Deputy Regional Director for Africa at the Red Cross.